I was swimming in the pool when my boyfriend's father arrived, holding a tool in his hands and slamming it down with a force that made me freeze. For a moment, fear washed over me, but I quickly regained my composure. In today's story, I'll share how I stumbled into a temptation I never saw coming. It led to a mistake I deeply regret, one that involves my boyfriend and his father. It's a tale of forbidden emotions, guilt, and decisions that changed everything. I'm Luna, a 25-year-old university student living in New Rochelle with my parents. Between classes, I pick up shifts at my aunt's cafe. Not the most glamorous gig, but it helps me afford a few luxuries here and there. Life was steady until I met Daniel, my current boyfriend, at a college party. Honestly, when we first met, I thought it was just a casual thing. You know how college parties go, fast-paced, fleeting connections. After chatting for a few hours, we ended up sneaking off to the bathroom for a brief, impulsive moment. Once that was over, we went back to the party, exchanged numbers, and called it a night. Looking back, I know it might sound wild, but let's face it, these things happen at college. To my surprise, Daniel messaged me a few days later, and soon we started dating. It's been nearly 3 months now. Until last September, though, I hadn't met his family yet. From what Daniel told me, I expected his family to be warm and welcoming. His mom had already made a great impression. We'd had a long video call where she gushed about how much Daniel talked about me. She even joked about how smitten he was. I thought it was sweet, but deep down, I wasn't feeling the same level of affection for him. And after what happened later, I doubt I ever will. Still, Daniel was eager for me to meet his family in person, so I agreed. He proposed we have a small gathering over the weekend at his father's house. That caught me off guard. Wait, your dad's house? I thought your parents lived together, I asked, confused. He gave an awkward laugh and explained, "Oh no, my parents split up 6 years ago." That piqued my curiosity. I had assumed his parents were happily married, based on the conversations I'd had with his mom. Trying not to seem too nosy, I asked casually, "What happened?" Daniel hesitated but eventually shared, "My mom caught my dad cheating. She saw everything herself. She filed for divorce right away. But they've moved on and get along fine now. We even hang out as a family sometimes." I was stunned. His mom always seemed so calm and happy that I never would have guessed such a dramatic past. Though I wanted to know all the juicy details, I held back, sensing it was a touchy subject. Instead, I steered the conversation in a lighter direction. "I see. But wouldn't it be easier to have the party at your mom's place?" Daniel shrugged. "My dad's house is way bigger. He's got a pool, a barbecue area, and a ton of space for everyone. Plus, my mom's okay with it. She actually thinks it's a good idea." Even though I was still processing all this new information, I agreed. Daniel was so excited about introducing me to his family that I didn't want to dampen his enthusiasm. A moment later, Daniel pulled out his phone and opened up a social media app. "Here, check out my dad's photos," he said, handing it to me. At first, I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. As I scrolled through the pictures, I was taken aback. His dad seemed like the epitome of success, a well-groomed, confident man with a sharp sense of style. His photos showcased luxury cars, exotic vacations, and a stunning house complete with a pool and sauna. As I scrolled through the photos, it was clear Daniel's father lived a lifestyle straight out of a movie. A mansion with a pool, luxury cars, and high-profile parties. "He's an event promoter," Daniel said, his tone laced with pride. "He brings famous people to town, and everyone loves his events." One photo caught my eye. Him beside a sleek sports car with a much younger woman, both smiling confidently. It wasn't just the extravagance, it was his aura. Daniel's father exuded a magnetic charm. I handed Daniel back his phone, saying, "Wow, your dad seems really well off. I had no idea you came from such a wealthy background." His response surprised me. "I don't care about any of that," he said with a shrug. "My mom raised me to live simply. And that's how I like it." At first, I found his humility admirable. But as I thought about it more, I couldn't help but wonder, was it really humility? Or was he simply comfortable knowing that no matter what, his dad's success would always be there as a safety net? Daniel's indifference to luxury, to ambition, stirred mixed feelings in me. On one hand, I appreciated his simplicity. It felt genuine. On the other, it made me question whether he was too content, too complacent. Deep down, did he rely on the knowledge that his dad's wealth meant he didn't have to try as hard? As I mulled over these thoughts, Daniel and I wrapped up our conversation. We finalized the plan for the weekend gathering, and I couldn't ignore the growing curiosity bubbling inside me. As soon as Daniel left, I grabbed my phone and started searching for his dad's profile online. What I found only deepened my fascination. The pictures painted an even clearer picture of a man who lived unapologetically in the lap of luxury. He was the opposite of Daniel in every way, bold, worldly, and confident. His lifestyle was captivating, but there was something else about him that struck me on a deeper level. I couldn't help but notice how well he carried himself. Despite his age, he had a physique that could rival men half his age. Strong, well-groomed, and undeniably charismatic. I felt an unfamiliar tension growing within me, one I didn't want to acknowledge. This isn't right, I muttered to myself, shaking off the thoughts as I locked my phone. But the uneasiness lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I tried to chalk it up to curiosity, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. The week passed in a blur of classes and daily responsibilities, leaving little time for me and Daniel to see each other. I stayed busy, hoping the distraction would quiet the restless feelings brewing inside me. But as Friday rolled around, I received a text from Daniel reminding me about the party. The moment was here, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. I told myself it was just nerves about meeting his family, but a part of me knew the real reason. The thoughts I'd been wrestling with all week hadn't gone away. They'd only grown stronger. Daniel sounded thrilled when he messaged me that Friday. "I'll pick you up Saturday morning," he wrote. "We're having a barbecue and swimming, so bring your bathing suit." The moment I read that, my heart skipped a beat. Not just because I was about to meet his family, but because the day would take place at his father's house. Images from the photos I'd seen of him came flooding back, and I couldn't shake the strange mix of curiosity and nervousness I felt. I replied to Daniel's message, keeping it casual, but my mind was already racing with thoughts about how the day would unfold. And yes, I started obsessing over what to wear. I wanted to make a good impression on everyone, his family of course, but part of me couldn't ignore the urge to stand out in front of his father too. I packed my bag carefully, choosing bikinis that were stylish but not too revealing, just enough to look good without going overboard. I added flip-flops, sunscreen, shampoo, and a change of clothes for later, ensuring I'd be ready for anything. Every item I packed felt like another layer of preparation, not just for the day itself, but for the unpredictable emotions swirling inside me. Once my bag was ready, I treated myself to a long shower. I exfoliated, moisturized, and used a subtly scented lotion that always left a lingering, pleasant impression. My goal was simple: to feel confident and polished. But as much as I wanted to focus on the family gathering, my thoughts kept wandering back to Daniel's father. I tried to push the images away, telling myself I was overthinking. That night, I went to bed early, determined to wake up refreshed and looking my best. Saturday morning came, and I woke up feeling oddly radiant. When I caught my reflection in the mirror, I couldn't help but smile. There was a confidence in my expression I hadn't noticed before. I had no doubt this day would be unforgettable. Daniel called, his voice upbeat. "I'll be at your door in an hour," he said. I hurried to get ready, eating a hearty breakfast while mulling over my outfit. I finally settled on tight denim shorts that highlighted my curves, and a flattering blouse with just the right amount of charm. To finish it off, I spritzed on my favorite perfume, the one that always drew compliments, and grabbed my bag. Feeling more excited than nervous, I decided to wait for Daniel outside. The moment I opened the gate, there he was, right on time. I hopped into the car, bubbling with energy. As I leaned in to kiss him good morning, the atmosphere shifted slightly. The kiss lingered, and for a second, it felt like we were about to get carried away. But I laughed, whispering, "Calm down, love, we're still in the street." He chuckled, and we composed ourselves as he started driving. During the ride, Daniel chatted about the barbecue and how excited his family was to meet me. But my thoughts kept drifting elsewhere. No matter how hard I tried to focus, The image of his father popped into my mind, uninvited and persistent. I nodded along to Daniel's words, but my anticipation was building. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Daniel announced, "We're here." My heart raced as the car approached a massive wrought iron gate flanked by towering coconut trees. The sheer size of it left me speechless. The gate opened to reveal a sprawling estate with manicured gardens, elegant stone pathways, and a mansion that looked straight out of a luxury magazine. As we drove toward the house, I couldn't help but notice the array of cars parked outside, each one more extravagant than the last. The stark contrast between Daniel's laid-back personality and his father's opulent lifestyle became glaringly obvious. When the car stopped, I stepped out, doing my best to appear calm and composed. But my heart was pounding so loudly, I wondered if Daniel could hear it. Sensing my tension, he smiled warmly and asked, "Nervous?" I forced a smile, replying, "No, I'm calm." It was a lie, of course. The enormity of everything, the mansion, the luxury, the thought of meeting his father, hit me all at once. This wasn't just a family barbecue. It was stepping into a world I'd only seen in movies. As we walked toward the massive front door, which looked more like the entrance to a castle, I took a deep breath and reminded myself to stay focused. No matter what happened, I knew this was going to be a day I'd never forget. Daniel put his weight into opening the enormous front door, which creaked slightly as it swung open. The moment we stepped inside, my jaw dropped. The house was breathtaking, straight out of a luxury lifestyle magazine. A grand, sweeping staircase greeted us near the entrance, and the polished floors gleamed under the soft lighting. What caught my attention immediately, though, was the view. Through massive glass panels, I could see an exquisite backyard with a sparkling pool surrounded by a manicured garden. The whole scene felt surreal, like I'd walked into another world. Even the giant door that had seemed so imposing outside now felt almost insignificant compared to the sheer scale of the interior. I couldn't hold back my amazement. "Wow, this house is incredible," I whispered to Daniel. He grinned, clearly pleased with my reaction. "If you love it that much, I'll bring you here every weekend," he said with a playful wink. That idea made me smile even more. But before I could respond, we moved toward the living room. Sitting gracefully on the plush sofa was Daniel's mother, scrolling through her phone. She was stunning, poised, elegant, and youthful in a way that completely surprised me. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought she was his sister. The moment she saw us, she put her phone down and came over with a warm smile. Pulling me into a tight hug, she kissed me on the cheek, her energy immediately putting me at ease. "Wow, my son chose well. You're beautiful," she said, her tone sincere and full of admiration. Flattered, I thanked her, a smile spreading across my face. She looped her arm through mine and led me to the backyard, where a covered table was set up perfectly for a barbecue. The space was cozy yet sophisticated, and it was easy to imagine spending the day there with family and friends. We sat down, quickly falling into an easy conversation. She was charming and full of life, making me feel as if I'd known her forever. Meanwhile, Daniel stood up and announced he was going to find his dad to get the barbecue started. As he walked away, I let my eyes wander around the house, soaking in every detail. The elegant decor, the tasteful artwork, and the sheer luxury of the place were overwhelming in the best way. It was all so different from what I was used to, but the warmth of Daniel's mother and the beauty of my surroundings started to ease my initial anxiety. For the first time since I'd arrived, I began to relax. Excitement replaced my nervousness as I looked forward to spending the day in such a welcoming, beautiful environment. What I didn't realize was that the most unforgettable moment was yet to come. From the backyard, I heard Daniel and his father's voices approaching. One voice in particular stood out. It was deep, commanding, and instantly captivating. And then he appeared. Daniel's father walked into the yard with an energy that seemed to fill the entire space. "My son, your wife is wonderful. What a catch," he exclaimed warmly. His words embarrassed me, but I couldn't help laughing a little. I stood up, and as he approached, he extended his hand before pulling me into a firm, welcoming hug. "My name's Frank," he said with a wide smile. "I'm this guy's father. Welcome to our home. Make yourself comfortable." The moment he hugged me, I couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between him and Daniel. Frank was taller, broader, and carried himself with a confidence that was almost magnetic. His sheer presence was overwhelming, and it felt as though his arms completely enveloped me in that brief embrace. He smiled warmly before stepping back. "I'll be with you all in just a moment. First, I need to help Daniel get the barbecue going," he said, excusing himself toward the grill. I returned to my seat beside Daniel's mother, who continued chatting enthusiastically, but my attention wasn't entirely on her. My eyes kept straying toward Frank. There was something about the way he moved, the way he interacted with Daniel, that was utterly captivating. Every gesture, every word seemed to command attention. It was as if he had this invisible pull that made it impossible to look away. My mind buzzed with thoughts I didn't want to acknowledge, but they were there, and they were impossible to ignore. Frank and Daniel worked at the grill, arranging the meats and setting them to roast. After a while, they headed back to the kitchen to grab beers for everyone, leaving the scent of sizzling barbecue wafting through the air. As I sat there, trying to focus on the conversation with Daniel's mother, a strange sensation began to settle over me, an undeniable pull that I couldn't explain. Something about being there, about him, was starting to feel almost surreal. We all gathered around the table, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. The atmosphere was warm and lighthearted, filled with laughter and shared stories. Frank quickly became the center of attention with his charismatic storytelling, sharing funny anecdotes from Daniel's childhood that had everyone chuckling. His mother joined in, adding those little details only a mom would know, which made the stories even more entertaining. As the afternoon wore on, the vibe grew more relaxed. Frank had a way of captivating everyone at the table. Whether it was the way he gestured while he spoke, the confidence in his voice, or his infectious laugh, he had an undeniable charm that drew people in, including me. I tried to stay focused, joining in the laughter and contributing to the conversation, but my mind kept wandering. I couldn't help but notice Frank's commanding presence, his natural confidence, and how easily he seemed to bring people together. The contrast between his larger-than-life personality and Daniel's quieter demeanor was impossible to ignore. Eventually, Frank stood up and walked over to the barbecue, announcing that it was time to eat. As he moved, I found myself admiring the way he carried himself, so effortlessly confident and sure. A warmth crept into my cheeks as I realized I was letting my thoughts stray again. "This isn't right," I reminded myself, trying to shake off the feeling. We all sat down as the food was served, and the table filled with the aroma of freshly grilled meat. The laughter and chatter continued, and for a while, I was able to lose myself in the moment. But no matter how much I tried to focus on Daniel and his family, Frank's presence lingered like a shadow I couldn't ignore. He had a way of effortlessly commanding attention, cracking jokes, and bringing everyone into the conversation. I couldn't stop thinking about how magnetic he was. It was impossible not to admire him, and the more I tried to resist, the more my thoughts seemed to wander back to him. After we'd eaten, the afternoon heat became unbearable, so we decided to cool off in the pool. That's when I hit a snag. I didn't know how to swim, and the pool was much deeper than I was comfortable with. Daniel, ever the confident swimmer, jumped in without hesitation, laughing as he made a splash. His mother, however, announced that she needed to leave for a while to help her sister with something urgent. Frank walked her to the door, leaving me alone by the poolside to prepare myself. I took the opportunity to slip off my shorts and blouse, revealing the bikini I'd carefully chosen. It was simple yet flattering, and when I turned around, Daniel, already in the pool, grinned and shouted, "Wow, I'm one lucky guy." His playful tone made me laugh, though I felt a bit shy from the attention. But then, I caught sight of Frank standing nearby. His gaze lingered for a moment, his expression unreadable, before he smiled and said, "That bikini suits you well. Do you work out? You've got an athletic look." His comment caught me off guard, and my body felt warm. Not from the sun, but from something deeper. I managed a nervous laugh and replied, "I train a little, good genetics, I guess." I even threw in a wink, trying to keep things light and playful. As we chatted, Frank casually removed his shirt, revealing a physique that left me momentarily speechless. His well-defined muscles caught the sunlight, and for a brief moment, I couldn't look away. There was something magnetic about the confidence he carried, and I found myself struggling to maintain a neutral expression. Frank seemed to notice my reaction. His smile turned playful, as if he knew exactly the effect he was having. He leaned forward slightly, his voice casual yet filled with that same undeniable presence. "Do you like men who work out?" he asked with a teasing tone. I laughed, hoping to diffuse the tension. "A trained body is nice," I said with a shrug. "But it's not a big deal to me." He chuckled, then glanced over at Daniel. "Well, your boyfriend doesn't seem to be a big fan of the gym." Our conversation ended there as Frank, with a grin, suddenly ran and jumped into the pool, splashing everyone around him. Daniel laughed, splashing him back, and the playful energy lightened the moment. I stayed at the edge for a few minutes, debating whether or not to get in. Finally, I made up my mind, stepping carefully into the water. As I did, I felt Frank's gaze briefly on me again, and the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. The cool water should have been refreshing, but the mix of heat, admiration, and nerves swirling inside me made it feel like the pool was shrinking. I couldn't deny that Frank's presence had a profound effect on me, and I knew deep down that this day was becoming more significant than I had anticipated. I hesitated at the edge of the pool, the sparkling blue water rippling invitingly below. My stomach churned as I admitted, "I don't know how to swim, and this pool looks really deep." Daniel swam over, his wet hair clinging to his face as he grinned playfully. "You can't swim?" "Really?" he teased, laughing a little too loudly. "Look at you, you're so tall. How can you not know how to swim?" His words stung more than I expected. My cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but I forced a nervous laugh, trying to brush it off. "It's true," I admitted. "I'm completely terrified of deep water." Before I could say anything more, Frank swam over, his expression calm and reassuring. His deep voice cut through the awkwardness. "Don't worry," he said with a warm smile. "If you want, I can help you. You can hold on to me. I won't let you sink." His tone was so steady, so full of confidence that I felt myself wavering. I glanced at Daniel, hoping for encouragement, but he just shrugged. "Go ahead if you want," he said, though his tone was noticeably less playful now. I hesitated, gripping the edge of the pool. Why am I even considering this? I thought. I barely know this man, and yet, there's something about him. He makes me feel safe? Or is it just his confidence? My heart pounded. A mix of fear, and something I didn't want to admit. I looked at Frank again, his calm gaze meeting mine. He's nothing like Daniel, I realized. Maybe that's why I trust him. He seems so sure of himself. Taking a deep breath, I nodded. "Okay, I'll try," I said softly, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and anticipation. Frank moved closer to the edge, offering his arm. Taking a deep breath, I grasped his hand and stepped into the water, gripping his arm tightly. The cold water made me shiver, but his steady presence had a calming effect. "You shouldn't talk to her like that," Frank said to Daniel, his tone firm but measured. "Making fun of someone's fear doesn't help." Then he turned to me with a softer expression. "Do you trust me?" he asked. I hesitated, caught off guard by the question. I guess so," I replied. He smiled gently. "Good. I know we just met, but trust me on this. I won't let you go until you're ready." Before I could overthink it, he pulled me gently into deeper water, his strong arms supporting me as I floated. The sensation of being surrounded by water, with him so close, sent a rush of adrenaline through me. "Relax," he said, his voice steady. "We'll go slow, and I'll guide you. Just focus on staying calm." His encouragement began to ease my fear, and I started to feel more comfortable. He guided me back and forth, keeping a firm hold while offering tips and words of reassurance. Slowly, I began to relax, even laughing at one point when I managed a few basic strokes. For a moment, it felt like the rest of the world faded away. Frank's calm confidence and gentle humor made the whole experience unexpectedly enjoyable. Meanwhile, Daniel swam alone nearby, occasionally glancing over but mostly preoccupied with splashing around. By the time I climbed out of the pool, I realized that my fear of swimming had eased considerably. I looked at Frank and smiled. "Thank you. I really didn't think I'd be able to do that." He smiled back, drying off with a towel. You did great. Sometimes all it takes is a little push. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and an unspoken connection passed between us. I quickly looked away, reminding myself that this was Daniel's father, and that any lingering thoughts were completely inappropriate. We returned to the table, where the barbecue was in full swing. The scent of grilled meat filled the air, and the lively conversation continued as if no time had passed. I sat down, letting the warmth of the moment wash over me. Daniel soon joined us with a heaping plate of food. Let's eat, he said with a grin, placing a plate in front of me. Hope you're hungry. I laughed, thanking him, and began eating while trying to stay present in the moment. But my mind kept wandering back to Frank. The way he had calmed my fear and encouraged me was still fresh in my memory. As the meal went on, I found myself growing more curious about him. So, how do you know so many famous people? I asked, genuinely intrigued. He smiled, his eyes lighting up. Oh, it's just part of the job, he said, pulling out his phone. He began showing me photos of celebrities and well-known figures he'd worked with over the years. Each photo came with a story, and I found myself hanging on his every word. The more he shared, the more fascinated I became by his life, so different from anything I'd ever experienced. As Frank continued showing me photos on his phone, we came across one that immediately made me pause. It wasn't just any photo. It was an image of him, caught in what I can only describe as a rather compromising moment. My reaction was instant. I averted my eyes, feeling both startled and a bit embarrassed. Frank quickly realized what had happened. His face flushed as he fumbled to explain. Oh, I forgot to delete that one, he said with an awkward laugh. To ease the tension, I smiled and shrugged. Don't worry about it. Everyone has photos like that somewhere. I tried to keep my tone light and casual, but inside my mind was racing. The unexpected glimpse into a different side of him had sparked something I couldn't quite name. A mix of curiosity, intrigue, and something far more complicated. We shared a laugh, but there was an undeniable shift in the air. I couldn't stop replaying what I'd seen in my mind, and it only fueled the strange connection I felt toward him. Before I knew it, words escaped my lips that I hadn't meant to say aloud. I want to see more, I whispered softly. I froze, realizing too late that my private thought had accidentally slipped out. Frank heard me, and his eyes flashed with a look that sent shivers down my spine. His gaze was intense, playful, and entirely unsettling. I nodded, stepping away, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. What had just happened? And how was I supposed to face him, or Daniel, after this? Just then Daniel reappeared, his hair damp and his face slightly flushed. I had to shower. The heat was killing me, he said, rubbing his temple. I think I've got a headache. Do you want to head out? Yes, I replied quickly, relief washing over me at the thought of leaving. Staying any longer would have been unbearable, with everything that had just happened fresh in my mind. I gathered my things and headed to the bathroom to change. When I came out, I walked over to Frank, giving him a warm hug. Thank you for everything, I said sincerely. You've been so welcoming. He smiled and, to my surprise, invited us to a party he was hosting at the end of the month. I agreed without hesitation, though a small part of me wondered if I should have. As I hugged him again before leaving, the moment felt charged with unspoken emotions. I climbed into the car with Daniel, and we began the drive home. So, what did you think of the visit? Daniel asked curiously, his tone light. I forced a smile. I loved it. The house is amazing, and your parents are wonderful. What I didn't tell him was the truth, that my mind was spinning from the events of the day. From Frank's kiss to the growing attraction I couldn't seem to shake. Now I can't stop thinking about him, his confidence, his lifestyle, and the way he made me feel. It's a whirlwind of emotions that's left me confused, but undeniably drawn to him. And with the party on the horizon, I can't help but wonder what might happen next. If you want to hear about the party and what unfolds, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this account of forbidden emotions and unexpected connections.